Hello, YouTube audience. My name is Jonathan Farrell, and I'm a Saskatchewan-born painter and drawer. And I have a Bachelor of Fine Art and Education degree, and I'm finally realizing that I should probably be using the powers of YouTube and social media in order to reach a wider audience with the things that I'm wanting to teach. For this first lesson, I'm going to be teaching the basics of how to draw a simple cartoon character. This lesson will then lead into more discussion of cartooning, and then that will lead into how to draw human anatomy and more realistic figurative drawings. And when I use the word figurative, I mean the human body. And if this initial drawing series is a success, I will then be starting to teach you how to paint. So to begin with, if you can grab a pencil, if you're wondering how I'm going to be drawing on screen, I'm using a Wacom digital tablet. I've got my digital pen and my little tablet here, and I'm going to be shrinking down this video that has me speaking, and you can follow along. So let me just pull up Sketchbook Express. It's a wonderful tool that I've been using in drawing. So to begin with, actually, I'm going to just change the size of my canvas, if you can bear with me. That's the beauty of working digitally, is you can quickly change whatever you're wanting to have on screen, or the size of your canvas. So the first thing that I would do when I'm drawing a cartoon character is start by drawing a basic circular shape. This is going to represent the body of our character. And when you're drawing a cartoon character, typically the head is misproportionately large, often taking about 1/3 or 1/4 of the overall height of a character. So just draw quite large at the top of your page, making sure that there's space at the bottom for the rest of the body. Then what you're going to do is you're going to draw a curved line running along the side of the character's face, and this is going to show the midpoint of where the eyes and nose and all the facial features should be located. We're then going to draw a basic oval shape for the snout or the mouth, and then 2 cheek shapes on each side of that rounded oval shape for the snout. One thing I want to point out at this point in time is that if you can just follow where my mouse is located, the cheek that's further away from you is actually smaller, and that's because there's this principle called perspective. I'm going to further enhance that idea of perspective as I draw these 2 ovals for eyes of my character. You'll notice that the width of the eye that is closer to us is considerably wider than the eye that is further away. So it's that whole idea that if I'm just going to make my face full screen for a moment. Now, if you look at my eyes from a side view, you'll notice that my eye facing you, the audience, is larger than the eye that is further away. So we're dealing with a 3-dimensional object. It's not just head on. We're actually dealing with a 3/4 view of a person's face, and because of that, whatever is closer to the audience is going to be larger. So thank you for that. So my plan with this drawing will be that we will finish the face, and then we will continue on with the rest of the body. The next thing that we can do, just as I've drawn a midpoint line for the face, we can then draw another line in the middle of the snout, which will indicate where the nose will be located. And at this point, you can decide what kind of an animal you want to create. If it's a cat, a dog, a mouse, a rabbit. Due to copyright infringement, I don't want to make references to official licensed characters. But this basic shape right here is the basic building block for all the other features that would designate what kind of animal this is. One thing I want to point out right now, again, I'm going to make this screen full screen here. A cartoon character's ears, if you can imagine that my head is a globe and it's divided into a line going right down the middle of my face, as well as a midpoint line here, as well as a line running through the middle of my head, running across and over. So that's being divided in half as well. The back two quadrants at the top of my head, right here, I don't know if you can see that, this is where the character's ears are always going to be growing out of. So those two top quadrants. So I'm just going to decide right now that this character is going to be a dog, and his ears are going to be kind of flopped over. But if you could see through his head, if you can, just going to find the color here, I'll make it red. Where the ears would be attached to the head, and again, you don't see this because we're looking through the head at the red, and I will erase this in just a moment. That's where they would be attached or affixed to the head. I'll quickly erase that. And then you can draw the rest of the ear. So the ear is kind of flopped in front. And it's just a basic, ovalish shape attached to. So you can think of this as two separate shapes, sort of this almost like horns sticking out the top of the head, and then these two big, I'll draw it in green, two big rectangular pieces sticking out from those horns to create the shapes of those ears. Next, we're going to go in and draw more of the detail on those eyes. So I'm going to just zoom in for a moment here. And those eyes are, again, the pupil, the black part of the eye, is usually quite large in comparison to the rest of the eye. And just keep in mind, just as we made the overall shape of this eye skinnier than the eye facing towards us, so will the pupil. The pupil is going to be shrunk down the same amount as this eye that's further away. Next, I'm going to draw a rounded shape indicating where the highlight of the eyes are. And if you're ever wanting to add life or character to a character's eyes, this circle of white is very important. Next, we can fill in the rest of the black. And at this point, to kind of, I'm going to make this character a little bit cute, more of a cute type character. So I'm going to have slanted eyelids just at the top. And just one thing I want to, I'll just zoom in for a moment. Notice how this line is chopping off the top part of the eye. The eye would actually continue over top. It's overlapping the top part of the eye. But because it's being overlapped, this part is erased, and we're left with just that sort of wincing expression of those eyes. Next, we can draw the eyebrows, the eyebrow shape of this character, and it's up to you. I'll show you two styles of eyebrows that you can choose to use with your animal character. One is eyebrows, and eyebrows always start in the middle of the face. So again, there's two imaginary lines running down from where the eyes are located. This zone in the middle is never crossed. You never cross into this zone here when you're drawing eyebrows. It always extends from the middle of the face, the midpoint, from the middle point of the eye outwards. So I'm going to continue drawing those eyebrows. Need to fill those in. So as you can see, those are very sort of conventional eyebrows. Another point to be made here is those eyebrows follow the overall flow or shape of the eye. Just as the top of the eye kind of follows this curve here, the curve of that eyebrow is going to move in that same direction. I did mention that I would show you a second version of the eyebrows. And this is often used, again, I won't make references to specific cartoon characters, but you'll know what I mean in just a moment. The coloration of the fur of the character can also indicate where those eyebrows are located. So if I draw a line through the middle, and then a line that follows around the eye, the space in between, and I'm just going to use sort of my digital airbrush tool to fill this in. The space in between here, this is where all the coloration for the fur would be located. And usually over the top of these ovals, you would further sort of exaggerate that eyebrow shape over the top of this ovalish shape. So, and again, the ears would also be colored this same gray color. I'll just quickly fill that in. So this is the coloration of the fur, and most likely the snout and the cheeks would be a different color, depending on what the coloration of your creature is. But this is where the gray would be. For simplicity, I'm just going to erase everywhere that I have drawn that gray. I'm going to go in, and now we'll finish off with the features of the nose and mouth. So we're going to draw the snout or the nose. Now you can draw a triangular nose if you're going to do like a rabbit or a dog or a more typical animal. You can draw a triangle. And please note that the side of the triangle facing away from this midpoint is smaller away. So the red part is smaller than the side part on the green, than the green side of the nose. The green side is larger because it is closer to us. Perspective. So I'm just going to leave that triangle as is. Another type of nose you could consider would be a rounded sort of ovalish shape on the very end of that snout. So this would be another sort of typical or common nose. But I'm going to keep it more anatomically correct, even though this is even though a lot of things about this creature is, not accurate to a real dog. I'm going to keep to this simpler triangular nose. Then we can fill out more of the detail in the mouth. So there's going to be a curved line on the inside of that curved line on the inside of this. And these lines will then be drawn and will meet the snout in the middle of his face. So do you see that? There's this great big sort of smile happening from the cheeks to the snout. And actually, I'm going to erase this for a moment. This part here, this red part here, this would actually be hidden. You wouldn't actually see the full line connecting to the snout because it's a three-dimensional object and the form of the snout is covered in that far cheek. But something like that for the mouth. And then we can chop into the bottom part of the snout, this upside down triangular shape. And then we can start adding some features to his snout. It's up to you if you want to add whiskers or not. So we have the cheeks, the top part of his snout, and then usually there'd be a slight indication of a bit of a mouth underneath this. And sort of your tell, there's always sort of a stereotypical quality of each animal type. But for the dog, the tongue hanging out of the mouth, this instantly reads as dog once you have that tongue sticking out from the top. And you might want to add, some raindrop shapes coming out away from the tongue. One last feature that I would like to add to this character's head would be some fur on the top of his head. So a little bit of sort of a rock star haircut, bit of a mohawk or something going on. One thing that I want to point out, whenever you're drawing hair, you'll notice, I'll just zoom in again, you'll notice that I'm using letter M and letter N shapes. So letter N, letter M shapes, chunks of hair. And what I mean by that is instead, like a lot of people when they're drawing a face, they'll draw hair like this. Like when you're new to drawing, you're going to draw each individual hair. And what I want to propose to you is that is not a good way of drawing hair. The superior way to drawing hair, so if you've got your smiley face, is to have random hair chunks coming out from the character's head. And the more random those chunks are, the better it's going to look. And then usually you'd have a few chunks falling into his face. But letter M and letter N shapes are what you're looking for when drawing hair. The next thing that I want to show you, and actually I'm going to just shrink this down. This is the wonder of the digital age. Whoa, I can re-shrink the head on command. It's fantastic. I personally love drawing digitally. The next thing that we can do is draw a pear-shaped body for this character. And this is sort of if you look at cartooning textbooks, this is a very commonly used body shape. So you've got the rump, the larger form on the end sticking out to the back. You've got the small of the back has kind of got a curve. And then this point here, the very top of that rounded shape. So it's almost like there's a circle. So if you're having troubles drawing the pear, just think about drawing like a circle shape with sort of this rounded form at the top. But what we're going to do with this pear shape, it'll make sense in just a moment. You can then have your two arms sticking out from the top of the pear shape, as well as your two legs sticking out at the bottom of the pear. The next thing that you'll want to do is to divide each line in half. Chop, 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 chop. And this is the midway point for the arm and the leg. So one thing I want to quickly, I'll just make this full screen again. One thing that I want to point out with any arm or leg, the elbow is actually, so the distance from here to here is the same distance from here to here. So the elbow is in fact halfway down the arm. And the same is true of a person's leg. So if I zoom in here and I draw a circle, because we know where the arms and legs are, we can then start adding the three-dimensional forms. We can start filling those in. You'll also note once we have drawn this character, it's going to look very stiff, but for the sake of simplicity and just showing you the basic arm and leg shapes, I'm keeping it simple. One thing that you can do, so to draw the arms, so you can go from thick, so we've got the top of the pear shape, thick to thin. I'm going to just exaggerate this a little bit so it really comes across. So it's thicker when it's attached to the top of the pear. So this end is really thick, but you don't see that thick end, it's really thick. This part is really thin. And then same thing with the bottom part of the arm. So it's thin at the elbow, gets thicker, and then gets thin again. And the same is true with the other arm. So we're going to have a bit of a shoulder, thick to thin, and then it gets thicker again to thin. So we have this thick to thin quality happening with the arms. And the same is going to be true for the legs. Thick to thin at the knee and gets thick again and to thin. And you'll notice that the shape of the, I'm just going to move this for a moment just for emphasis, the overall shape of the leg is very similar. So you've got thick to thin to thicker to thin. So that overall shape is the same for the arms and the legs. The next thing that we can do is draw in a bit of a neck shape. Finally, you're probably wondering, oh, we haven't attached the head to the body yet. That is true. Now we're going to draw the hands and feet. So for the hands, we're going to draw a basic square shape for the hand and another square shape for the second hand. I'm just going to erase what's here just to make it more clear what I'm talking about. Actually, I'm going to change my color to red so that this comes through. And I'm also going to increase the size of these squares. I'm just realizing these should be larger. So I've got my larger square. I'll make my larger square here. Perfect. Now, with the hand, I'll make this full screen again. One thing I want to point out, with the hand, you've got a basic square shape to indicate sort of the flesh of the hand. And then you've got these fingers that come off from the top part of the square, and then the thumb comes off of the bottom part of the square, and it just comes out. So the square represents this part right here. Now we can draw the fingers. Actually, I'm just going to relocate this guy a little bit. It's getting a little bit cramped. Just a moment. Thank you. We go in and we can draw the fingers. We're going to draw 3 fingers. Why? Oh, a good question. A lot of people wonder, why do a lot of cartoon characters have 3 fingers? And that is because a lot of the animation studios back in the day, when they were just discovering the art of animation, it was far easier to animate 3 fingers instead of 4. The less joints and the less objects that were moving, the easier it was to animate. Less complicated. And then you've got the thumb sticking out the side of the square. And then same here, you've got the thumb with your 3 fingers sticking out of this person's hand. Next, you can fill in the flesh. I don't know if that's the proper way of describing it, but you can fill in the overall shape of the fingers. One thing I want to point out here as well, those fingers, when they are joining to the square of the hand, notice that they come to a point. It's like a triangular shape. They're not wide. What I don't want to see is, just a moment, the square with individual fingers that are just kind of detached coming off like this. Like, you don't want the space in between the fingers when it comes to the hand. You want it to come to a point. So, and I'm going to do the same treatment to this other hand. And then we've got all of our fingers, and I will erase what's in between. Perfect, we got that finger. And we'll do the other hand here as well. Perfect. Now, one thing I'm going to do to this hand, he's going to be wearing gloves. And actually, you know what? One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to actually switch how this hand is facing. I'm just going to add the thumb to the other side of the hand, so that I can show you how to draw the inside as well as the outside of the hand. Okay, so on this dog's right hand, you're going to have the flesh of the palm, this sort of rounded form, showing the flesh of the thumb, combined with a couple more lines showing some of the creases inside of the hand. You wouldn't see this detail on his left hand because we're seeing the outside of the hand. All right, now for the bottom of the feet. One easy way that I will draw feet is I draw sort of a ball for the heel, and then I'm going to show you two feet, a side view and a front view. So the side view of this foot, just to keep it simple, is going to be a triangle with sort of a rectangular shape in the front. And this rectangular shape can be divided into 3 chunks. And so you've got the toes attached to the foot. And then you can draw a bit of a sort of just how we have the flesh of the hand right here, this flesh of the hand, of the thumb. We're also going to have the flesh of the toe right here. And then there's going to be a bit of an arch of the foot coming up, and this comes down again. So I'm just going to erase all my extra lines here and just kind of just fill in a little bit more detail and differentiation between those toes so that they look like they're separate. Okay, so you've got a basic foot of this character's right foot. And actually, you would see this line kind of coming in like that. Okay. And actually, one thing that you will come to understand, notice how these shapes, here I'll just quickly draw these out for you. Notice how these shapes are overlapping each other. You've got this heel, then you've got this sort of square shape in front of the circle, and then you've got this circle of the fat of the toe. You're going to have, as you continue to draw characters in 3D, you'll have a greater and greater understanding of how shapes should be overlapping in order to make them seem a little bit more believable. So for the bottom part of this foot here, I'm then going to have draw a bit of a rectangular shape for the toes. And just a little trick here, it's going to be thicker on the inside. So whatever part of the foot is facing towards the inside of the person, that's where the big toe would be. And then this tapers down to a smaller, like an exaggeration. It would be something like that. Toes get smaller as they move away from the body. Mine's a little bit more gradual, but you can divide that into 3 chunks again. And so if we're going to draw the front of the foot, we can draw the inside curve and straight line. We'll go into feet in more detail in a later lesson, but for now, hopefully this is making sense. And if you're finding feet frustrating, there's nothing wrong with just having sort of a triangular foot with maybe a bit of a ball shape at the end, with a bit of an oval coming to a point for the foot. Nothing wrong with something like this. And you'll notice a lot of cartoon characters would do something quite simple. I'll just erase what's there. Okay, next we can just sort of fill this in. Again, I'm going to differentiate those toes, kind of cutting them apart. You're going to see a bit of an overlap of the toe. Got the heel, this comes in. So something like that, and maybe a little bit of an indication in between the toes. And actually, I'm just going to make this is what I love about digital. I'm going to just rotate it a little bit. This is the perfectionist in me, and I'll actually make it a little bit larger. Oops. So am I cheating? It's up to you to decide. Digital tools, one thing I will argue about digital artists is that they are highly skilled. It takes a lot of skill in order to be able to use the digital tools appropriately and to create things that are, I would consider art. The next thing that we can do for this this dog, just to further enhance that this is in fact a dog, is draw a line coming out from the top part. As I had mentioned before, the top part of the tail would come out of the top part of this rounded form of the tail. But I'm going to just draw a line. So there's sort of this line of the tail. And as far as which way it's wagging or whatever, it's up to you. And an easy way to then draw it, you can have sort of chunks of fur coming off the back side of that line. And instantly you've got sort of your dog's tail. And I'm just realizing I should probably bring this more to a point. Sorry about that. But as long as you've got that principle of letter M and letter N shapes coming off of the back side of the tail, that's perfect. And then finally, we'll give this dog some pants so he's not naked. And the curve, actually, again, just thinking of this as a three-dimensional object, this is going to curve up. This is following the form as if to suggest that in the background, behind the character, is this green side. So it's this circle drawn in 3D around this sphere of the butt. So I will draw that in black. And then we can have the legs of the shorts popping off. Whoops, just shrink this down a bit. It's got the legs of the shorts. And voila, presto, you've got the shorts of a dog who's just standing there. And so yeah, thank you very much for, I just want to thank you for following me along with this video. We'll revisit these principles in a later video, but just as you, so just to review, we covered a simple cartoon character. In the next lesson, we're going to be looking at how to draw a face, a very simplistic cartoon face in three-dimensional perspective when it's rotating. So my head from a three-quarter perspective, looking up, down, and to the side, complete side view. We're going to start looking at that as well as some basic facial expressions. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.